All right. Hope everyone is well. I don't plan on this being a marathon session. Hopefully, we'll all be very insightful and incisive. But I just felt like talking about a few things. And yeah, the title is Anything Goes. That is true. If you want to ask me a question or suggest a topic, you can do so. So feel free to request to be let up. Um, what should we talk about? Joe Biden, kind of a tragic figure in many ways. I think genuinely wanted to bring the country together, but he seems to be set up for a fate much like LBJ. His, or not his base, but a very important component of his base is so mad at him, so disgusted about the Gaza situation that they, in a way, want him to lose. And they become part of the, what I'll often call the fuck you contingent that is basically Trump's base and driving engine. So Michael Moore nailed it in 2016 when he said that, you've lost your job, you're in debt, your ex-wife is long gone with another man, your kids can't stand you, you think you're gonna you can't get your car fixed, like it's basically a country music song. The one thing you can do is vote for Trump, and all of those people who have harmed you hate Trump, and so you just vote for him, drink their tears, say F you world. That really is that's an important driving energy of the Trump movement. Now, I think there's some other things going on with Trump, but I think that has always been an extremely important component, that resentment or even vindictiveness. It's just, I'm not even judging it in a way. I actually have sympathy for it. I feel like that often, but it just is what it is. And I think a lot of Biden's base is almost getting into that mentality of, you know, you want me to vote on the basis of like, we're not Texas or Florida. So you want me to vote for Democrats because you won't be as bad on abortion as Texas, Florida, and Oklahoma, et cetera. And yet you are facilitating, at the least, if not fully funding, the destruction of mothers and babies in Gaza. And you want me to fall for this. Fuck you. And so a lot of that millennial component of the Biden coalition, because I do think that support for Zionism tracks generationally. That's a very important thing to remember. A lot of the millennial component, some of the Gen X component, Zoomer components of the coalition, people who came out because they thought that, Trump was fascy or whatever, they are more motivated by hate and resentment. And again, I'm not judging them. I understand it. I felt the same way. I put out a tweet saying, look, I actually think that Biden's agenda was pretty good. Not great. I would defend withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think so much of the criticism of Joe Biden over that was bad faith, talking about technicalities. It could have been done better this way. Oh, yeah, sure, it could have been done better. It's always going to be messy. The fact is, he did it. Thought that was good. A lot of the domestic agenda is good. A lot of the Republican agenda I don't like and I don't support. But when you make this choice to fully back whatever Israel wants to do, and you have the power to maybe not stop them completely, but you have the power to send a very strong message to Israel. And you just can't. You work quietly behind the scenes or something. My levels of contempt really go up. And I become a bit like those fuck you voters. Anyway, just a few thoughts. Um, also, Barbie. So I kind of liked the Barbie movie. I didn't dislike it, I would say that. And I think people who were obsessively bashing it, or in Ben Shapiro's case, doing like an actual burnt offering of Barbie dolls, very weird. Um, I didn't love it as well. I did think that Ryan Gosling is Ken. I didn't know that Ryan Gosling had such comedic talent. And so I did think that that was pretty brilliant. Now, uh, is it worth an Oscar when you're basically kind of doing an SNL routine or something? I don't know, maybe. I'm not going to. I mean, what is an Oscar at this point? But yeah, he was great. And there was a lot of, I think what was interesting about the Barbie movie is that it was fairly equivocal. It obviously struck a chord with women of all ages, actually. I think even a lot of younger women. I think I told this story either on a space or on my Substack group of my mother and I actually went to go see Oppenheimer on either opening night or maybe on Sunday or something like that. And we could not find a parking space at the theater. We were like, what is going on here? I didn't even recognize it. And then once we walked in, we parked like, I don't know, very far away. Once we got there, we realized what was happening, which was everyone was dressing up and, it was sold out. All the merch was sold out. I mean, it obviously struck a chord, and it was about, being a kid again. And it was a kind of girl power thrown in there, and, so on. It's all fine. I don't, it's not me, obviously, my cup of tea, but certainly don't judge it or anything. So it struck a chord, but the movie itself was pretty equivocal. Like there was a little bit of 90s era feminism, but then it was almost undermining feminism as well. It's a very equivocal movie. And I've seen some interviews with, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of the director who was, cruelly snubbed by the patriarchy. Greta Gerwig? No, I'm not mispronouncing her name for any, to diss her or anything. Again, I thought it was a pretty good film. Um, but she was kind of saying this is a feminist film. Well, I don't know. Was it? Or does it kind of express this convoluted place we're in right now? But anyway, I find it funny when all of these people, including Hillary Clinton, are talking about Margot Robbie not getting a Oscar nomination. And I would say this, I don't know of another actress who could pull off Barbie in the way that Margot Robbie does. She's obviously extremely attractive, but then she has that kind of crazy energy. And then there's an almost kind of self-awareness or self-deprecation and a little bit of irony. She's kind of playing that character from, Long Island or New Jersey or wherever that she played in The Wolf of Wall Street. Just a little bit, just a touch of that. So I actually think she was brilliant. Now, again, are any of these things worth Oscars? Is this the equivalent of, Daniel Day-Lewis? I'm not sure about that, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if Ryan Gosling deserved it, then so did Margot Robbie. But look, who cares? It's obviously inherently subjective and whatever. But I do find it interesting that there's this kind of white privilege with Margot Robbie, where everyone's like, the patriarchy is attacking the movie and things like that. Well, America. Oh gosh, I'm so bad at these names. America. Her first name's America. I think her last name's like Ferrano or something like that. She was nominated for supporting actress. No one even talks about that, even though she played an important role in the film, kind of like the straight man or centerpiece role, the thing that holds it together because the other characters are so wacky. You kind of need a center of gravity, and no one's talking about that. And it's almost like Margot Robbie is this sacrificial lamb. Um, there are other women who were nominated for Best Actress, only women. I mean, if Margot Robbie got it, some other struggling actress in Hollywood would have been snubbed. It's such a like funny example of hot white girl privilege. I have to say, it amuses me. But anyway, hopefully that's enough vamping to get the conversation started. If you want to talk, just request, and I'll let you up. But a solar being, you have the floor.
Did you see, did you see that Hillary posted about the Barbie movie snubbed?
Yeah, I mean,
She dropped a hashtag Hillary Barbie.
oh my God, I didn't even know it was that bad. Actually, I missed that. I saw that she had posted. I saw a screenshot, and I was like, this can't be real, but apparently it is. I mean, again, it's just a totally incoherent thing. I mean, a Hispanic woman who was actually kind of like the unsung actress in that film was nominated. So like, but you're not talking about that. You're talking about Margot fucking Robbie, you know, the hottest woman on the planet being a victim. I mean, God, it's just unbearable. But yeah, no, I'm not surprised. That's really tone deaf. Hillary, to give her some credit, she can be pretty insightful on political dynamics and things like that. But when she misses, she really misses. And I think she's very tone deaf in many ways. Her comments on Israel have been very tone deaf about the situation of what women like her, like smart girls who went to Yale and got a law degree. She's very out of touch with the way they are thinking about things. And yeah, I think, sticking up for I mean, it's like, who will defend Margot Robbie? It's like everyone is the answer. You're not exactly sticking up for the underdog with that one, Hillary. Uh, anyway, um, if anyone else, let's see how many we have in here. Oh, we have 100. That's very good. Yeah, it's anything goes. If you guys want to talk about a subject, you gotta suggest something. So, do you have anything else, Solar Being, or
Originally, I was going to ask if you had any thoughts about Texas Senator Abbott
Governor Abbott?
shutting or yeah shutting down the border, the razor wire.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't quite know how real it is. I mean, I've been saying that I'll make a few points, and they're all related. So, I have been making this extremely bold prediction that this will be the last election. The country is so extremely polarized. Whichever way the Trump Biden needle points, half of the people, or at the very least, like 20% of the really activated, really motivated people within each camp are going to freak out. And like J6 was a freak out, an activation of the conservative movement in many ways. The legal apparatus came up with theories. The populist hoi polloi rioted, invaded the Capitol, etc. The alt media promoted it and then went into denial mode afterwards. So I mean, it was kind of like the actualization. They didn't have the military, so it was not a successful coup, but it was a kind of like activation of the conservative apparatus, and that was remarkable. And damaging. I think that will pale in comparison with, you know, in the face of what could happen. I do think that there is a very strong possibility of a left wing freakout as well with Trump. He's a fascist. You know, we have a BLM situation or something. So, I mean, I think a lot of crazy things are going to happen. And the fact is, uh, Governor Abbott is disobeying the federal authorities. He's also disobeying the Supreme Court. And that is remarkable. I mean, I'm not going to call, Civil War 2.0, but I don't think it should be just, overlooked or it's just a stunt. This isn't like Ron DeSantis, shipping some migrants to Martha's Vineyard so he can get plaudits on Fox News and from, Tim Pool and things like that. This is serious shit. Um, I don't know. I guess I have, I don't know. I guess I have like slightly ambivalent feelings about the razor wire. I mean, I kind of get the idea that that's extremely harsh, but, it is what it is. Um, it, you absolutely can defend your border if you are a nation state. I don't know what to say. And so I don't know where they're going to work it out, whether the federal authorities are just going to ignore this, whether they're going to actually enforce their will. I mean, at the end of the day, the immigration system is a federal matter, and they need to engage in this situation in some way. So I don't know. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. Is this going to start civil war? It might be one of those things that's connected to a kind of overall polarization that's occurring. Um, okay, Carl Kartalinsky. You have before. Carl, you requested to be speaker. Got to unmute yourself. All right.
There we go.
There you go.
What's the 7-second rundown of what the hell is going on right now, Richard?
Well, I've been trying to address that, Carl.
But just 7 seconds for the new viewers hopping into the whatever's going on right now.
Oh, Biden, kind of a tragic scapegoat in a way. He's foiled by his own longtime support for Israel. Much like Trump in 2019, he was just coasting into re-election, and he gets foiled in the final year. It was COVID and other things with Trump. It's the Gaza situation. If members of your own base start having contempt and hatred for you, and they in a way just want you to lose to prove a point, that's a very bad situation to be in. And I think that is largely the situation that Joe Biden is in, very much like LBJ. It's like, don't talk to me about Roe v. Wade. You guys could have done something about this. You could have done something about it earlier. Don't just cry tears for a victim of these, conservative policies. You have no ground to even talk about women's rights when, women and children are being slaughtered in Gaza. That's the view. Again, I'm not even judging that view. It's just that's the view of a substantial portion of the base, and that is very bad. Very bad. When you start having
Richard,
contempt
I was looking for a 7-second answer there.
This is Richard
the rum
Spencer.
is too deep. It's too deep.
This is Richard Spencer.
For me right now.
It is impossible, in fact, for me to speak without in 7 seconds. I cannot.
Second attention span base.
Well, yes. I can't win over the TikTok generation. I don't want to.
It's a goddamn shame. I find myself maybe in the 8th second, so I find myself superior to the second senders. But I speak for them and I say I still don't know what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
But
Do you have a question, or we got some other people who's requested here?
no, keep it
All
going.
right,
Keep it going.
awesome.
I'm just here to listen.
Zargans, you have your hand up.
Yes, I had a question for Richard Spencer, longtime fan. I love your Radix Substack. I read it all the time.
Thank you.
What do you think of? I don't know about anyone else, but my Twitter algorithm is taking me down the rabbit hole of like National Socialism and like Hitler memes, and it feels like this unescapable vortex that's been implemented to gather information. What do you think are the implications of this sudden rise in staunch anti-Semitic uh, Nazism symbology overflowing Twitter?
Okay, well, why don't you? You're asking a fairly intense question. Why don't you tell me what you think about this? I'm not even positive exactly what you're asking, but why don't you tell me what you think about this? You feel like you're being dragged into a vortex on the For You tab of Nazi symbolism. Is that
Yes.
okay? Um, I don't necessarily feel like that, but this sounds a little bit like the guy who was complaining about these ads for gay cruises always showing up on the websites he visits, and those being Google ads that are derived from his search history. But so maybe it is a mirror reflection that you are looking into, Zargans.
No, I was just wondering because there was a recent article of when Elon Musk went to Auschwitz, and he was talking about that if social media existed in the 1920s, these people wouldn't be able to hide.
That's
And
an
now with
interesting,
social media,
okay, let me pick up on that question because I think that's an interesting question of, if it's obviously extremely hypothetical and kind of ridiculous. What if the internet and social media existed in the 1940s? Would the Holocaust have happened? And I don't know. I kind of go both ways on that. I don't like that he said that because it seems like he's patting himself on the back. Like, oh, I'm such a great guy. I've released the truth. If only I were around, I could have stopped the Holocaust. I think that's a very self-serving way of thinking about it. Now, it is true that um, my For You tab, and this is derived largely from people I follow, there are a lot of horrific images about what's happening in Gaza. There are a lot of highly critical, sharp comments about Israel and so on. And that is something that I never would have experienced, if I were, say, living in the 90s and reading my local paper or something like that with the AP uh, reporting on this and an opinion that's deriving from fairly establishment or just kind of boring mainstream people. So I will give Elon that, but I think the other thing is like we're almost due to censorship. I think that's one thing, and due to like the total inanity and sludge quality of commentary, I think we're almost drifting into another place where like people are going to be watching cat videos or pornography, or they're going to be yelling about Margot Robbie getting snubbed and how the patriarchy is back and whatever. And they're going to overlook a genocide happening right under their noses. I think that it's kind of both in a way. But I think the latter point is almost like more insightful, more accurate. In fact, I don't think social media can be great. We wouldn't be talking right now if it weren't for that. And I have learned things from people, and I enjoy connecting with people who I otherwise wouldn't talk to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems to all be part of, like, I guess you could call it dumbing down or deadening or removing yourself from the real world and living in a, hyper real digital scape where you're not really understanding what's happening in the world, you're not really connecting with people, you're not really thinking clearly about things. And I think it's kind of both things, but I think it's more of the latter. I think it's more of the, we would ignore the Holocaust precisely because of social media. I think that's more correct than what Elon Musk said. But it's actually a fascinating question.
Thank you. You can bump me down.
Okay,
Thanks, Ray.
yeah, thanks for your comments. I hope you do not fall into the Nazi vortex. Um, Brun Kennard.
Brun.
Brun.
Thank you.
All
Hi
right.
there. So I've never really listened to you very much because I don't like listen to gurus and so forth. I understand that there's a market for them, but when I did listen to you once before for maybe like 30 or 45 seconds, you mentioned something, if I remember correctly, about like group identity and the sort of myths that go along with that, sort of in the vein of, I can't remember the author, but that 90s or 80s sociologist about how nations are imaginary communities.
Right, Benedict
Do you think
Anderson. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, there you go. So is that sort of the way you approach all this, that there are no natural communities? There are always these acts of self-assertion, sort of in the sense that Martin Heidegger in his wonderful self-assertion of the German university when he was not rector under the Nazis at Freiburg, or, in the same way that many indigenous peoples now demand identification not through the sort of 19th century politics of recognition by the dominant state, but more by the act of their asserting their being and the resurgence of their own being. So do you have any sense of what I'm talking about there? Because a lot of these kids that
Yes.
you say fall into this Nazi vortex or one of these, they get the idea that they're part of some natural group that's being denied recognition, as opposed to that this is sort of an adventure and we all get to make our own groups. So any
Right.
thoughts
No, I
about that?
understand. Okay, you've said a lot of different things. You've kind of, there are a number of different threads there. But yes, I do feel, I do believe that communities are largely imagined. Identity is imagined. And it's like the one of the things that's, I've not read Benedict Anderson in a number of years, well over a decade, but I mean, one of the things that stuck with me was that idea of everyone in, say, Frankfurt all reading a the Frankfurt Zeitung paper together, and maybe even a national paper. The act of reading that every morning at 8 a.m. is a kind of act of nation building. You feel like your neighbor's reading it, and someone a few towns over is reading it, and someone in the capital city is reading it. You're all kind of together. You have the same concerns, and that is a kind of fundamental act of nation building. I think there is a lot to that concept. I mean, I obviously believe that there are, I guess, what you could call um, organic nations, in the sense that they arise due to geography, and geography and ethnicity are, of course, connected, if not identical, and so on. But I do think that notion of a unified national community with a destiny and deserving of rights or so on, I think that's a much more modern concept. And yes, I do think that Benedict Anderson, says a number of correct things about that. Our own identities are a matter of assertion and will and storytelling, if you like. But that just is what it is. I don't know what the opposite is. It's, you feel like you have a collective right as a people or something, or as a human. I mean, I've just always found these notions to be utterly stupid. The world is about asserting yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And one quick follow-up. Do you long for the heady days when we were all looking at Hunter Biden's penis pictures? Because I really think that was a simpler time and much more enjoyable than what we're going through now. Thank you.
Okay. I don't quite know what to make of that one. Um, all right. I'll just let some more people up. Okay, Jace, you have the floor.
Hey, Richard. I
Hey.
saw you on a show a while back and you mentioned a project of yours called Apollonianism. And I was immediately galvanized, so I was hoping you could talk about that if you feel like it. I think the implication was this was a new zeitgeist or a future zeitgeist project that you were
Yeah.
working on.
Yes. Well, the book is almost done. We are in late stages, but the book is almost just like one step on the journey. Um, the book is a discussion of. I mean, it sets up a lot. It's obviously fundamentally written by Mark Brahman. I'm been shepherding this thing. We're actually co-authors at this point, but a lot of the key insights are his. It is a highly critical book. Discusses the concept. It introduces REM theory as a way of looking at culture. We discuss the Bible, the nature of Judaism and Christianity, and there's it's titled "The Birth of Tragedy." There is a scapegoating motif, so it's all critical, you could say, and kind of like a literary analysis of a way of thinking and a symbiology that has been passed down through generations. Now, Apolloism is something else. It is an adoption of Greco-Roman deities, but a reinvention of them, a kind of assertion, to go back to what I was talking before, for how these could function in the 21st century and beyond. But it's all based on a recognition of a couple of things. The limitations of Judaism and Christianity, the degree to which Judaism and Christianity are in many ways, how should I say this, diabolically conceived, a rejection of them, also a recognition of a obvious fact that I don't think anyone could deny, which is the death of God in the way that Nietzsche meant it, which is that at some point, Nietzsche has a line at one point where he's talking about this hermit, or Zarathustra meets a hermit in the woods who still seems to believe, and the magic still enchanted, and the magic's still real for him. And he says, can it be true that he doesn't know that God is dead? That was the way in which Nietzsche announced, or the madman announced, the death of God. It's already dead. Now the shadows can remain on the walls of the cave for quite some time, and I don't think we've ever really gotten out from under Christianity, you could say. Christianity deeply inflects liberalism, Americanism, our basic preconceptions about politics and rights and all of this kind of thing. So it's a kind of new start, and it's a recognition. Apolloism would be a new start, a kind of recognition of where we are right now, a need to create new gods. I think the fact that we've stuck with the Bible and Abraham, Moses, Jesus, I mean, it shows a fundamental, like appalling in many ways, lack of creativity. Sometimes you have to smash things. Sometimes you have to cut something off. If you have a limb that's infected and it's going gangrene, you really need to just slice it off, or it's going to kill you. And I think it's time for people to have the courage to start thinking, at the very least, but acting outside of a Abrahamic system. I mean, does any of us here really believe in that mumbo jumbo? do you actually believe that Jesus Christ walked the earth? Moses? Or do you recognize that these are literary figures that are implanted in your head and inflect your thinking and inflect your decision making, etc.? At some point, you just have to be brave enough to break down the walls and to sever ties that are holding you back, to truly liberate yourself from this, to recognize mistakes in the past, not judge anyone, really, but break free. And yes, that is what we are up to. All right. Ace, how are you doing?
Let's go. Hey, Richard.
Hey.
I was going to ask you about older tweets. You mentioned Koselleck's. What was that? The Crisis and Critique of History, something along those lines.
Oh, yeah. I would highly recommend that. But I've always recommended that book to people. Yes.
I was curious, like relative to, I'm sure you've gone over some Strauss or Bertrand Russell. What was it about that book specifically that talks about history and the Enlightenment from a more interesting perspective relative to those other two?
Well, I mean, Koselleck, he's doing intellectual history, and so he's in a way putting ideas into context, but then also putting context into ideas. Like, how do I say this? He's also like understanding history theoretically, and so he's doing both. And he was a student of Heidegger and Carl Schmitt, believe it or not. So he's definitely, influenced by these ideas, and I think he kind of went off in a direction that was uniquely his own. So he viewed, and he also recognized his own situation. So he might have actually overreacted, to be critical and fair here, but he saw the Cold War as leading towards total annihilation and as being driven, I mean, understandably in that point of time. Obviously, we look back now and it looks a lot brighter, but you can understand how someone would feel that way. And he also felt that both sides were equally deranged. So the communists wanted world revolution or nothing, and Americans, better dead than red, and roll back communism. So we saw both sides as insane, effectively, and religiously motivated, and they were going to end each other. And he compared that to the wars of religion, where what he was noticing is that the wars of religion, following after the Protestant Reformation, were an expression of like unlimited warfare. So previously, warfare was always hell, of course, but it could be limited. You could have limited aims. You could be aligned with the person you were fighting, a year or two later. All is forgiven. We have mutual interest. You don't want to just annihilate the person that you're fighting. And, no one's going to claim that war was good or peaceful or something. But at the very least you could say is there were limits on it. Once you get into religious warfare, it's warfare of annihilation. So you want to totally destroy your opponent. He's a Protestant or he's a Catholic. He cannot live. And the wars of religion, if you look at like the German-speaking world, Bohemia, etc., I mean, these were quasi-genocidal campaigns. You can only estimate, but it's like 30% of Bohemia were slaughtered during this time. I mean, this was something else. And what he was saying is that the Treaty of Westphalia, they solved this problem with whose region, whose religion. So basically, a lot of people say, I've heard conservatives get this, and conservatives are almost inherently wrong about everything they say, but they were particularly wrong about this. They're like, oh, Westphalia founded the nation state or what. It did not. Westphalia basically said that there were principalities that each region would follow the prince's religion. But you could also kind of have your religion in a certain private sphere. And so you were protected. In a way, religion was privatized, you could say. And it was no longer a matter of we must destroy all heretics. And this peace, which was a great thing, kind of led almost to too much peace. And it was the foundation of Enlightenment thinking, which began as critique, but ultimately kind of flowed into a universal religious-like system, very similar to the religions that predated it. So you must free the world from all servitude, and all humans have rights, and if you don't respect those, you should die. This kind of like religiously motivated liberalism. And so there's this great irony that the Enlightenment arose in the shadow of the state, so to speak. It arose in kind of a good time overall, but it kind of fell into its own type of religious thinking. And both Americanism and communism are both coming out of that way of thinking. They both are based on individual rights, on liberty, or a universal society, whether a kind of middle class society or a proletariat society. And these are ultimately religious systems in his mind. They're ultimately going to kind of lead to a cataclysmic battle. So anyway, there's a lot there, and I haven't read it in a number of years, but I should. If I reread it, I would probably have even more nuanced or detailed way of talking about it. But I think you get the picture. It's very it's really kind of like a theory of history. It's intellectual history, and then he talks about a lot of thinkers like Rousseau and Voltaire, et cetera. But it's kind of like a intellectual history in a different way. It's like a theory of modern history.
And would you agree with those guys, the conceptual historians, Koselleck, and were those other two Germans?
Yeah. No, I'm obviously a fan. Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Ricardo Williams.
Hey, Richard. Hey,
Kanye maximalist, male model, half Cambodian. Wow. Okay.
Dude, I was a big fan. I thought he did a lot, and I really do think he had, much like yourself, like an impact that lasts beyond when he was in the spotlight.
Thank you.
So, what I was going to say was, I'm interested what you think about. I've only been listening for the last half hour. You may have talked about it with the southern border. Our mutual friend that we discussed last time. People in his circle have like thrown the theory out there that the next front is like a war on the cartels, much like we had the war on terror last generation.
Yeah,
that was able to unite Americans. That the southern border
for 3 years,
the dialectic between the interventionists and isolationists, like Republicans have basically positioned themselves as, let's not defend. Why are we defending Ukraine's border when we're not defending our own?
Yeah.
So the Mick is going to be like, well, yeah, sure, we could do that. I don't really care where we spend, like where we point the weapons, but we need to point them somewhere. And I'm just curious what you think about that. What you think about Amy Coney Barrett and Roberts, like just doing basically what they did with Obergefell and just totally.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm somewhat sympathetic. I mean, it's like ultimately this is a federal matter. I mean, I don't think they didn't write an opinion, right? Because this was like an emergency decision, so they just like expressed their decision, but they didn't justify it, from what I understand.
Right.
Yeah.
But
so
I can
understand where they're coming from. Like, it's a federal matter, and you have to obey that authority. So I get that. Now, maybe it was, I don't know what conservatives are, Amy Coney Barrett's a woman, and she's too sympathetic with the other. Yeah. I mean, maybe. But yeah, it's kind of cut and dry. I mean, look, what Abbott is doing, I don't know if this is going to lead to anything, but it is a bit of a constitutional crisis. I mean, I don't, you know.
Well, Biden's in a no-win situation. He either, because the thing is like they're cutting the barbed wire. Like, why are you cutting barbed wire? The state of Texas is doing your job for you, and you think you should spend your time cutting barbed wire?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't understand. Who agrees with that? No one. That is not popular. So he's stuck between cutting barbed wire and folding to a state governor basically saying, I don't care. Come fight me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I mean, I think it is like an actual constitutional crisis. Whether it will lead to something big or not, or whether we're going to become, whether the kind of like next thing, the next paradigm is going to be like a war on drugs revamp, which George Herbert Walker Bush was promoting after the end of the Cold War.
Well, because like, listen,
we're going to kind of
here's the pretense.
Again.
They just say there's the lawlessness. They say Mexico isn't able to enforce Juarez, so in order to fight the cartels, we need to go in there and basically act as police. Right. And then the next thing you know, like it's de facto U.S. territory or something like
that could happen. Yeah. I mean, it's all speculation. I don't know. I mean, I have predicted that we're going to see a great unraveling of the country very soon. Now, the degree to which this will be a part of that, I don't know. This is kind of new, you know, what's happening right now. It just seems to me like a war on the cartels. I mean, I don't know what to say. That it's not exactly Russia. You know, I mean, like you.
No. Well, I'm not suggesting it's,
you know,
like
it's like crime. Big... You know, it's not a state power. I mean, they might act like a state to some degree in the sense of like having territory or controlling politicians, but it's different. It would, you know.
Well, what was Al Qaeda? The whole war on terror was built on targeting non-governmental groups.
Right. I agree.
I mean, it was all about rogue actors and like criminal networks, you know?
Yeah.
And then so, you know, and the thing is about, and I didn't realize it would happen before the election. I kind of expected that whatever happened in the election, there was going to be governors that said, you know, I don't recognize him, or there's just a complete resistance to federal law, you know, one way or the other. And, you know, like a California just flouting whatever Trump wants to do, you know?
Yeah.
And
I can see both things happening. I can see Trump winning and California doing something like that. I can see
right, and the reverse.
Yeah, and this is obviously a case of flouting federal law. Yeah, I can see both things happening.
So it's like federalism is reasserting itself, and I think that's really, I think it's a very chaotic moment. Like you're right, it's all speculation, but how do they pull it back together? And I think it takes a war to bring it back together.
Well, yeah, you're speaking from my own heart in saying that. Yes, I was hoping that a neo-Cold War would, you know, kind of end polarization, end division, end wokeness, you know. But I'm not sure that would happen. But yeah, look, let's also just be frank here. You know, it's all nice to talk about, you know, you hear these politicians like, you know, when you go meet someone in a diner in Iowa, you realize that we're just all the same and we all have the same concerns. Like, this is all just hogwash. I mean, the way to unite a country or a people is to fight someone and to fight them to the death and to face off and to that whiff of death in the air. It's the greatest smell imaginable. That notion that you could no longer exist, you know, to be or not to be. That's when you choose to assert your being. And that's the only way to turn things around. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to decline and, you know, into self-satisfied drug-using morons with no culture, modern America. We need some sort of, confrontation to, fully realize ourselves. But that's the way of the world. That's been
Well, and
true
the
since
struggle.
we were living in caves.
Well, the struggle for the regime is to convince. You have to be convinced of the threat. Like in
Yeah,
essence, no matter our difference, no matter our squabble, we're basically both going to die if we don't work together. I mean,
right.
that's what you need. And is the threat of the cartels and what's going on the border enough? I don't know.
No, I'm not even sure illegal immigration is enough, to be honest. Because look, you know, let's be fair about what's going on here, okay? I agree that there are some bad hombres, as Trump said, and they're gangs, etc. They're human traffickers. It's a mess, right? But there are also a lot of people who are here illegally who are bussing your table and like roofing. They're not. I mean, you can oppose that, as I do largely, and still recognize that like they're not trying to kill you. The notion of illegal immigration and we have to be real about these kinds of things. Hispanics just are not. I don't know.
Well, but it's not just
They're not an
Hispanics, really.
existential threat. Again, I obviously I think the border should be enforced as well, but for every like what is it, M13 or MS whatever, there's also like 10 Hispanics who want to make a burrito for you. Let's just be honest, right?
Yeah.
Well,
it's not.
the right wing gets so like obsessed with this stuff, and it's like, I don't know.
Well, I think it's not just them. I don't know that I lived in the DC area around the same time you did. I don't know when the last time you went back. It's like in the last 5 years, it's just crazy, man. There's nobody that looks like us. No one left.
Uh-huh.
And they're not all Hispanic. They're just from everywhere. You just got people from like Central Asia. Like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How did you get here? And I think that's part of the concern.
I think the
But anyway, listen, I've got to run.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
appreciate you having me on, man.
Sure.
I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later, Ricardo. Yeah, I think replacement is not just Hispanics. I think in a way Hispanics are being demonized for all this. The real replacement is like high IQ people from India and Asia, taking managerial jobs. And again, these are the people conservatives defend as like hardworking or whatever the hell. That's a much greater threat towards, your children's prosperity and future than, a bunch of Hispanics who love tacos and baseball and brass band music. That's what needs to be talked about. Are these hardworking, highly skilled people? There are a lot of people with high IQs. There are millions upon millions of them in Asia and India who could come in and basically manage your business for you as, culture declines. I think those are the threats. I had a provocative take during the Trump era that I only support low IQ immigration. And a lot of that was kind of like trolling conservatives who are always like, they love these model immigrants or these hardworking, folks who just want to get ahead and whatever. Those are the people I hate. They're just like a bunch of shallow, money grubbing robots. I would much prefer like a low IQ, guy who maybe he needs a buck, but he's not really like going to fundamentally change the country. He'll probably leave, he'll send his money home. He's kind of fun loving and goofy in the way that these people are. I think those people are much preferable to high IQ immigrants. So we should do the reverse of Canada. We should only allow people in if they have shockingly low IQs or debilitating mental illnesses or handicaps. That is the model immigrant in my eyes. But all of those smart, crafty, kind of sociopathic ones or whatever, they've got to go back. All right. Kind of not joking, although my tongue is a bit in my cheek. All right. I have some work to do tonight. I just kind of wanted to do this for a little bit, so we'll just kind of go on lightning round. Okay. Duvid.
Oh, God bless Richard, Ricardo's buddy. Just on what you were last saying about high IQ immigrants, and you've talked in the past about America as an empire. Obviously, you being a Spencer, and taking high birth, or you being familiar with the high end of America. Is it somewhat empire or bust in the sense of high IQ immigrants, the fast track to power, questions of the JQ and other things, but like America doesn't have a way to unwind from empire, and
Well, I think America has a way of unwinding from empire. I don't think the world has a way of unwinding from the American empire, because there's no real alternative. I mean, I don't think most people want Chinese domination. Muslim domination is horrible. What other power is going to do this? I mean, I think when America goes down, I do think there's probably going to be like a 500 to 750 year period of like dark ages of collapsing literacy and hygiene, lack of trade, superstitious religions, and so on. I mean, for the world, it's kind of American empire or bust, because
globalism,
the other options are not good.
I mean, I've claimed like the federal government has already fallen, and the corporations are keeping us on life support. But this perspective, it is return to the dark ages or one world order, and it's not really America; it's the corporate interest. Like the stock market keeps on making new highs, probably because they have faith that they could control what's happening in the federal government. And it's related to the immigration, in the sense of the way you prevent Russia, Chinese, Indian competition is to amalgamate them into the empire.
Right. That is one option, no doubt.
Or is there another option that you see?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the British Empire was run by just like a few people in London. I mean, there are other ways of doing this. I do think that if America goes fully nationalist and isolationist, you could say, or cuts itself off from the world, I do think that there would be like catastrophes around the planet. I mean, I genuinely believe that. I don't think there's any option to the American empire. But whether the American empire can exist while we have this population that doesn't really want it anymore and aren't proud of it, and aren't willing to sustain it, et cetera, I think that's a big question, actually.
Well, what about the stock market?
Bringing in,
I mean, why does the stock market keep on making new highs? Why is there so much faith in the corporations? Is saying, do the corporations have a plan B with the fall of America that they could?
Interesting.
What's the corporations?
Well, why don't you answer your question? You seem to have a perspective on this. I mean,
Well, it's just a deeper analysis involving financial concerns, globalism, things like a new world order. That, like I said, I mean, I've been kind of.
I wouldn't put too much faith in the stock market.
I mean, what do you say to my comment? The federal government's already fallen a few years ago, and
it's a self-sustaining problem.
Corporations are keeping
it's a self-sustaining institution. Like stock markets make a new high because you always need growth.
Yeah.
Well, because people have faith in the corporations. The corporations are overconfident in the corporations.
Corporations have faith in corporations. Corporations have a vested interest in making sure there's always a new high.
Yeah, but it's saying the corporations are the one amalgamating the Indian and Chinese, the high IQ talent. They're not necessarily making their way to the top of social governments, but they're making their way.
Okay, so now we're back. Now we're back at the point of the problem isn't immigration; it's high IQ immigration. It's the problem isn't the 10 people who want to make a burrito. It's the one Vivek Ramaswamy.
I'm not describing.
He's actually the problem, not the 10 people who want to offload a truck or make a burrito.
I totally agree.
But you guys are
I would have
prescribing, I'm just
100
analyzing.
Jose's who want to make burritos and love baseball and brass bands, and just keep out the Viveks.
If you want to offload an Amazon truck at a warehouse, no problem. You're welcome to it.
Yeah, I basically agree with that. It's that notion of like a Vivekian ruling class, which I find just deeply horrifying.
Well,
it's just these weird, shallow con artists. It's like they're kind of the trash from other countries on some level. They're not the trash in the sense of low class people. They're the trash in the sense of they're these like shifty. They don't have any ideals. They have neither ideals nor roots. They're just horrible. And Vivek is a con artist. And at the very best, those people can become like, I don't know, stockbrokers or doctors even. I mean, but that's not the worst thing. I would say particularly doctors, but it's just, there's nothing there. And at the worst, they become these pump and dump artists and con men like Vivek is. That's all he is. He's high IQ. There's no doubt. But I don't want people like that.
Well, I definitely understand that's how you feel. And that's why I'm just doing analysis. It's like these guys beat our system. They understood the system. They came in. They rose to power. Now they're largely controlling our society. Whether whether you're upset about it,
and they can even manage the kind of hoi polloi.
But then you answer your own question of, well, then why are there constant stock market highs? Well, because there's this new class of people who have a vested interest in making sure there's always a new stock market high. Like as the currency is inflated, there's more liquid capital to dump into idiocy.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
We've gone full circle now.
It's somewhat like a trust in the system, though. I mean, you could say your complaint, but say like, no, a certain amount of the wealth. You say the corporations are competent, they're doing the job. Society, the government might be about to collapse, but the corporations are keeping things running, and there's trust and confidence.
Eggs are $8 a dozen, but Apple stock has reached a new high. Like, there's proof that the American economy is booming.
Well, I didn't say the American economies, but I'm just saying you have to take analysis, and that's why I mentioned like the one world order. It's not necessarily the U.S. federal government; it's the corporations, and what's the nature between the corporations and the federal government and globalism.
I think you guys are missing the religious aspect with the illegal invaders from the southern border. They're all majority Roman Catholic. And I think it's cool Richard Spencer knows about the Protestant Reformation and the Treaty of Westphalia. I just want to add to your knowledge base the power of the Jesuits and the Vatican and what's called the Counter-Reformation conspiracy, where they want to take over the world for the Pope in Rome.
Where can we get the Apollonian immigrants from?
Well, Europe is going through a birth dearth, so I don't think we're going to have hordes coming in from Europe. No, the Apollonian project is not. It is an idealistic project. It is about changing minds, the way we look at the world, the way we think spiritually, and the way we feel in many ways, and that's what the project is. But yeah, look, a lot of Hispanics. First off, the kind of like evangelical Protestantism is definitely becoming popular in South America. It's fast growing. I remember looking at this question a number of years ago, and it seemed as if a lot of Roman Catholics will convert to some sort of megachurch Protestantism or some sort of Pentecostalism or something like that as they become American. So it's kind of an interesting, maybe more of a dynamic issue, but yeah, I
Well,
mean,
also
it's a
logistically, in
bit,
terms of how they're being shipped up here through Catholic churches, that's like how the smuggling network works.
yes. Well, I think you should. I don't know if someone like Nick Fuentes has been willing to address this reality about the church he supports, but there's no doubt that
Well,
that is possible. I don't know. I just feel like the age of Catholicism, like an actual resurgent Catholic Church dominating the planet, that just strikes me as um, almost unbelievable, unthinkable.
Delusional,
But
even.
well, we got
yeah,
Catholic Joe Biden, the second Roman Catholic president since Kennedy. And then, from
true.
my understanding, Georgetown University, which is a Jesuit university in Washington, D.C., they basically run the State Department, and you got all these Georgetown alumni
Yeah,
in
let's
the
get the
State
Freemasons
Department
up in
now.
here too. I mean, this is all.
Yeah, I want to bring that too, because the Jesuits also are involved with Freemasonry. They wrote all the degrees of Scottish Rite, like in the 1700s.
Woodrow Wilson was the last
And
Freemason, right, in history for presidents.
basically, Adam Weishaupt, the creator of the Bavarian Illuminati, he was a Jesuit professor at Ingolstadt University. And when the Jesuits were suppressed in 1773 by Pope Clement XIV, Adam Weishaupt was made the guy to set up the Illuminati as their new front group.
We're all Apollonians here. We all know that the Catholic Church is Jewish. You don't have to. You're preaching to the choir.
No, it's not. It's Jesuit. It's not Jewish. It's from like what's
The
called
Jesuits are Jews. We get it.
No, I just want to explain. It's the black nobility bloodlines. They're called the Venetian
The
black
Black
nobility,
Israelites
and they're
too.
not Jews. They're the ancient bloodlines of the Roman emperors, and they
All
run
right, all right,
Italy.
okay,
Okay,
All right.
that sounds cool. In fact, okay.
all right.
All right, let's move on from the subject. You've spoken your piece on this.
I did have something interesting. I think you might like, Richard.
Sure, go ahead. Isaac.
This is not the first time. I'm sure you probably know this, but I suspect most don't. This is not the first time the Supreme Court's been defied by an authority. There's a famous quote by Andrew Jackson. John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it. So I'm really interested to see how this is all going to pan out. I think it's remarkably, like, this is remarkable times to be alive, and I think history's got interesting annals in for this stuff. That's all.
I totally agree. I don't want to jump to conclusions or anything like this, or to think that like the Republic of Texas is going to return. You know, there was a Texas Republic, I think, for a few years there. Who knows? I would say this, that there still is a probably residual kind of like Confederate South will rise again feeling in the South, but I think that is residual and declining. If there is a place that still thinks of itself as kind of special or unique or a country all to its own, or it is Texas, in fact. So if one place is going to do it, it probably would be Texas. I mean, I think this all stands to reason. Again, I don't want to jump to conclusions because I can kind of see this issue fading, or I could see this issue intensifying. I could kind of see both. But I'm not sure I want to go live in Abbott's, Texas.
Abbott, Texas,
like ideal state. But it is pretty interesting. But again, it's like all of the signs are pointing towards dissolution of some sort, whether it's civil war or disobeying the federal government, et cetera. Like all the signs are pointing in that direction. And I don't really see a lot of signs pointing towards we're all going to come together as a country.
Yeah, I just don't know if Biden wants to.
I'm not endorsing nor condemning. I'm just pointing it out.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure Biden wants to, in the midst of this election, sure, if he believes, surely he still believes that this is all just, going to blow over eventually, or there's going to be some amicable outcome from this. I can't imagine him thinking that declaring, certainly they wouldn't declare war, but certainly the physicality of it, if at some point there is some kind of scuffle between the National Guard and the U.S. federal government, I'm sure he would just immediately realize that is the concession of his administration, effectively.
Yeah, I agree. I do not see him. I don't know how this is going to be handled, but I do not see like federal troops, shooting
Yeah.
border agents and cutting down the wire and waving through
Mr. Abbott, take down that wall.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean,
Richard,
but who knows?
I'm interested to know with the political landscape as it is. Like I'm an overt white nationalist. People will call me a racist all they like. It doesn't bother me. But the way things shape up right now, I have no problem saying I am a Biden supporter. I have no qualms about supporting Biden's decision not to engage further in the Levant. And I think the only thing that could happen, given a Trump presidency, is a furtherance of war in the Middle East while doing a placation to the white base in America with.
I agree. I mean, I am extremely
some sort of border wall.
Yeah, I am extremely ambivalent about all of this. I was a Biden fanboy, and I would defend so much about Joe Biden. And I still don't think he's a bad person. I think he's kind of.
I didn't support you. I didn't support you when you were on this crusade at first, and I've come 180 degrees. I couldn't say you're more right. You were more right on this than anything. You were right on this early.
Yeah, the blue-eyed people need a champion.
I'm often early, and then people come around, but this is the thing. I do think that Biden is making a very bad move. He's going to be, but I can't see him do anything else with regard to Israel because he's been such a big Israel backer for his entire career. It's like demanding that this guy change his mind dramatically at age 80 is almost asking too much of him. I mean, I feel sorry for him in many ways. And I don't think he's a great man. I don't think he's a bad man either. I think he's a good man. Now, Trump, I've been saying this a lot with my Substack group. It's like look at the Russia situation. I could make an argument that Trump, if in office, would just go fly to Moscow and shake Putin's hand and sign over most of Ukraine or something. And I could also imagine him increasing lethal aid to Ukraine. It was under the Trump administration that lethal aid to Ukraine was a thing. That did not happen. Obama actually opposed that. So there are all these weird contradictions with Trump. I could also imagine Trump nuking Russia for the guy. I mean, that's obviously less likely, but the guy, there is no principle. There's no ideology. And so you just cannot predict him. In terms of Israel, Trump's kind of playing a weird game. I mean, we know about Trump and Kushner, right? And so the idea that he's going to he's anti-Zionist or something is just wrong. And that being said, Trump kind of plays games. Trump is not a fan of Bibi Netanyahu. It's all personal, but he's not a fan because Bibi praised Biden or something at some point. Trump has made kind of suggestions about we won't get into a Middle Eastern war. I mean, again, he brought us very close to war with Iran and then pulled back the last minute. It's difficult to analyze him because there's no guiding principle to him. And so I don't I think it's ridiculous to think about Trump as a committed white nationalist or he's an anti-Zionist or he knows the score in the choose or something. That's just absurd. But might Trump make some weird, surprising decision? Yeah. I mean, it's just so strange. I think you sometimes kind of have to pull yourself back a little bit and not get on Team Trump or Team Biden. And you kind of have to try to look at it objectively. And it's hard, but I think that's the best way of looking at it. But yeah, I could also see this very much so. I could see Trump realizing the dynamic at play with Biden and being like, frankly, I, want to avoid any sort of war in the Middle East. And Bibi Netanyahu, he's not a fan of ours, not a fan of ours. But, I can see him doing all this kind of weird stuff at his rallies and getting left-wing support. Remember, there were former Bermany bros who voted Trump. That is a thing. And I think it could happen again weirdly. And again, these people are just in fuck you mode with Joe Biden over Israel, and they're going to do it. So I think that is possible. But then once he gets in office, he signs off on, the annexation of Gaza for Israel and, arrests Israel and all that kind of. I could see that happening. This just total betrayal.
I don't think he's I don't think the reason he's going to lose this election is because of Israel. I'm sure that's why the people that are vocal online, maybe that's why they're doing it. But I work in a warehouse, and I'm not going to say where, for obvious reasons, but I work in a warehouse, and I've got a very, very diverse group, about 300 people that work here, and none of these words ever come out of their mouth. No, the Gaza, Palestine, none of these. Nobody, Ukraine, all these stuff, and I've got a lot of Black coworkers that I work with that are the reason they're voting for Trump was because it's the amount of money that he provided during the unemployment in COVID, and all these when he signed that hurricane relief fund because Pelosi wouldn't refund or renew the unemployment thing or whatever, all these things, they said, he's not someone that is able to be controlled, and he's helped people is the most I've heard. I haven't heard any of these geopolitical. I don't think people care about this stuff at all writ large.
That's indicative of DEI shooting Jews in the foot.
It is look, you see all these Zionists turning on DEI, and it's for one reason, and that it's as saying they're these contradictions of DEI where they're going anti-Zionist. Now, I agree with you, the guys in the factory don't care about Gaza or whatever, fair enough. But, Twitter is real life in many ways. And there is a substantial group of younger people who feel passionate about this issue. And I wouldn't overestimate it in the sense of you see one millennial girl on Twitter who hates Joe Biden and be like, oh, Joe Biden's going to lose all 50 states or whatever. But I also wouldn't discount that random millennial girl who now
sex
hates
worker
Joe
with the
Biden,
Palestinian
because that
flag.
is significant. Yeah, exactly. Palestinian and Ukraine flag. That's kind of, it's an interesting combination, but you have to kind of gauge it. It's significant. And these margins are extremely tight, and those people staying home are just getting fed up and not being motivated to vote. You have to drag yourself off the couch to vote. Or something, or getting into full-on fuck you mode and just being all right, I'm just going to vote for Trump to burn it down. These are real things, and on the margins, that can really have an effect.
Yeah, in the swing states, it can have a huge effect, right? There was 20,000 votes.
It's he loses Michigan by 10,000 votes because Ann Arbor millennials are waving Palestinian
Greg
flags.
Johnson and what was the other one? Julie, I forget the Democratic third party candidate. I'm sure those affected it as well, which were great.
Oh, you mean RFK?
No, maybe RFK, but I meant during the last election, Trump won a couple of swing states by 20,000, 10,000 votes or something like that. And Gary Johnson, the Lapo guy or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure all these guys helped.
Yes, Gary Johnson was in effect. Yeah. Look, you got Cornel West. He is vocally, emotionally pro-Palestine and very authentic about it. RFK is like radically more Israel than all of them. It's a weird thing.
Is he running third party? I haven't been keeping up to date. Is he running third party? I've not kept up to date on what his campaign is doing.
I forgot what's happening. I think Cornel West is independent, and I don't know what's going to happen. I'll have to start paying attention. But those are forces. I mean, RFK will.
He's significant.
I've seen polls where RFK gets 20% of the vote or something. It's not to be denied. I don't like RFK at all. I would never.
Yeah,
vote
but
for
Kennedy,
him,
Roosevelt, these are just names that they feel good to vote for.
Exactly.
At first,
I think he is. From the polls I've seen, I think RFK is drawing from Biden. He has all of these right-wing positions. He's like anti-vax and pro-Israel, but I think the name itself is just drawing from Biden. So it's a very interesting situation.
If you go back and listen to your first Alexandria episode with, I believe his name was Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
That proves more, more true
prescient.
now. Yeah, prescient than any episode. Like, it's almost as if he's predicting the future, and it's scary. It shouldn't be that way, but it is.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just Trump is kind of this like counter New World Order, basically. And
it also goes to the Biden, the Biden is the lesser of two evils argument as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get some work done tonight, so I'm going to cut it off short. But MAGA Taylor Swift, I'm just very curious what you have to say. Are you the actual Taylor Swift?
Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay.
How are you doing, Taylor?
I'm good. You actually know who I am, but I'll DM you about it later. I joined on a different account I just wanted to bring up, I heard you talking about the high IQ immigration thing, and I just wanted to, I didn't know if anyone mentioned yet that a really good example of that is today when Greg Abbott made that whole letter about he's defying the federal government, he's defying the Supreme Court order, they're going to not take down the border fence. He's in New Delhi, India today, making deals with Indian tech companies to come work in Texas. And nobody seems to have a problem with that, though. No conservatives are talking
exactly.
about that.
I have much more of a problem with that than burrito makers.
I know, but conservatives
and I don't mean that to like sound racist or something. Like that's just not the issue. Yeah, that's actually a fascinating point.
Yeah, I DM'd you about it. I was on a different account that had like a bunch of numbers and no profile pictures. So I was like, he's never going to let me speak on this. So I DM'd you about it. But yeah, so I just think it's funny that
awesome.
I just think it's funny that no conservatives. It's just typical conservatives, like they don't see the issue.
Well, they would applaud it. Like, they're not gonna critique it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I'm actually surprised you don't like Vivek, Richard. I figured you would love this character who's wormed his way into a VP slot potentially. He's really played the political game. Yeah, he is. Obviously.
Well, he's a character.
Yeah, I find it's like one of those things where you find it endearing and repulsive at the same time. It's like he really maneuvered himself.
Yeah, I find Tim Scott kind of endearing and repulsive.
Yeah,
at the same time.
Exactly.
It's just so. He's kind of charismatic, and then there are all these rumors that he's gay. And he like forces himself into a marriage in order to get the VP spot, and then he's like just like debasing himself in front of Trump, like I love you. It's pretty.
Yeah,
funny.
it's pretty interesting. But it was a pleasure speaking with you, man. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, definitely, Isaac. Likewise. All right, guys. I will talk to all of you soon. Thanks for being on. I want to keep this short because I don't want to go 4 or 5 hours as I often do. But thank you for contributing. Thank you for listening. Hopefully this was enlightening, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.